before I even pee, I'm checking this. I'm strapping on a watch, which is a cortisol shooter. The kids can get me anytime. My husband can get me anytime. My team can get me anytime. My body knows that. You know where my favorite place is right now? On a plane, because nobody can get me. The desire for us to stay connected digitally to each other is bigger than any human condition has the capacity to fight right now. And we're like, we would give up everything. We would sell our homes and go to the bushes. Instead, we forget that we could just, I got to get in a plane 35,000 feet above the people to think that, my body can rest. And I think that's going to be the greatest understanding of this next generation is how we take back that agency.
Well, hello there. Welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. Talking all about human connectedness, human relatedness today. How does tech impact the way we relate in our relationships? How is it impacting burnout? I am talking to Dr. Jody Carrington. So interesting. She's got a bunch of books out. She's a powerhouse speaker and really a fearless champion for authentic human connection, which is what we were talking about during the entire thing. I was asking her all kinds of questions about her life and what brings you to want to do this. But what I love about her stance is that she really boldly believes that all humans have the capacity for good, which I do too. However, so many of us these days, because of isolation and burnout, have lost access to that good. And I think that really is true when you talk about things that you can do in this episode of The Terri Cole Show. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Jody Carrington as much as I enjoy talking to her. I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Carrington to the show. Hey, Jody, welcome.
Terri Cole. Listen, this is a dream for me because you're a goddamn superstar. So it's so exciting to be here.
I'm so happy we're here, that we finally got it together to do it. We really have so many similarities. I was saying at the top of the show, so much of the work that we do. But before we get into all of that and your books and your stuff and what motivates you, I want to know your backstory, right? All of us do what we do for a reason. All of us, anyone who gets into mental health, there's specific reasons why. So let's say you were a Marvel movie character. What would your origin story be of what got you here?
Oh, you know what? I grew up in a little town called Viking, Alberta, Canada. And I was raised in this really lovely family, small town. Everybody knew our names. Hockey players were the biggest deal. We drank excessively in gravel pits trying to get a husband. And it was a teacher that I think I always take it right back to, 22 of us started kindergarten together, the same 19 of us graduated together. And I remember where Mrs. Holly Nordstrom was standing and what she was wearing the day she had to tell us that then captain of our hockey team had been killed. And I remember thinking as a 16-year-old kid, if there is somebody at the helm of big emotions, the rest of us will be okay. And I knew that day, that's what I wanted to do something. I wanted to make people feel the way Mrs. Nordstrom made us feel. And later on, I started to understand the privilege it is to be raised in a secure place. And then also the big backstory that was in my family that I had no idea about. So my parents were high school sweethearts, married, had my brother 3 years later. And when I was pregnant with our first son, we were called back to the farm. Mom and Dad had got divorced. There had been a big disconnect between them. It shocked us all. And my parents announced to my brother and I that they had something they had to tell us that they had told nobody for 40 years. And so I'm like, what the I talk to these people every other day. What possibly could we not? Right. Dad's gay. What could you be holding for 40 years? And they said, you have a sister. They said, we got pregnant when we were 18 and told nobody. We bound your mom's belly. And we found a home for unwed mothers and you have a sister and she's found us. And I was like, what? And my brother was much more excited about this, because he's, now I'm the middle kid and I'm not the only girl. So I was like, I'm not a super fan. And they're like, do you want to meet her? And I was like, yeah, maybe next Christmas. And my dad was like, good, she's in the garage. Jesus, like a puppy. Anyway, that's not exactly how it went. She's always corrected me. She was in her car on the way here. But anyway, so
close enough, close to the garage.
For me, you know what I mean? And so I think that, as you grow, and we know this, you put the pieces of your story together. And so as I reflect on, I was the oldest on both sides, not knowing that I had a sister, that mom and dad had had this significant heartbreak, and I always needed to be funny. and hold people together and make it better. And I loved the role. It wasn't a hard thing for me. I don't reflect on this going like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. It was the greatest of all time. And I think that stepping into a profession that has allowed me the privilege of walking people home through some of their hardest stories has been the greatest gift of my life. And then, my first job, I spent lots of time as a police psychologist. That's where I got my master's, my PhD, and I lived trauma and organizational stress. And then I had to do a rotation with kids in my residency. I was like, listen, I'm not a fan. I much prefer big people, but turns out I did a postdoc in child psychiatry and learned a lot about the neurodevelopmental process of trauma. And fell in love with that work. And then my first job was on a locked psychiatric inpatient unit for kids at the Alberta Children's Hospital. And the hitters, the kickers, the biters, the ones that tell you to fuck off, I love those babies. And they taught me more than anything in grad school. And then I met my husband. We had kids late. And I started a private practice and coached hockey. And then started consulting on tough cases, and they would be like, "We don't know what to do." And it's always what happened here, not what's wrong here. And so we started to switch that narrative, and I started to speak, not by design, but here we are 10 years later, and I speak globally, and I have 3 books, and this has been the greatest. I still have a small private practice, but most of what I do is, inspired by, of course, your work. Terri is phenomenal, and it's really just about how do we disseminate and make this complex process of being a human much more accessible.
Okay, so many things to unpack there. So I'm gonna go backwards.
Yes, ma'am.
So you said, in sort of analyzing and helping decode complex psychological situations, it's not what went wrong here, it's what happened here. Is that what you said?
It's a Bruce Perry quote. Yeah, he and Oprah wrote a book of the same title. And I think when I figured that out, I mean, this is the question all the time when we work in this space to diagnose people. The question comes, they come into our practices going, what's wrong? What happened? What's wrong? What's wrong with this? Like, should I leave my wife? Should I leave my, why am I taking this job? Like, I feel like such a loser. I have imposter, whatever. I mean, you name it. And the question is often, we try to make a diagnosis. And so particularly at the Children's Hospital, I would see kids with like 87, like a litany of diagnoses, right? You got the ADHD and the ODD and the CD and the element of P and all the things. We never ask the question, what happened here? And when you switch that narrative to what's wrong with your partner or what's wrong with your kid to what happened here, and you really dig into that, it switches, what it turns on is empathy. Right. And empathy is the antidote to burnout. So if we think that in an organizational space or in a world where we want to throat punch everybody, it's really sort of understanding that, I think, shift that becomes so inaccessible when you're overwhelmed and lonely and exhausted. And that is who we're walking alongside every single day. It's who we're married to every single day. It's who we're raising in this new season of such noise that we're just not, we'll never be accustomed to.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the origin story for a moment, if we may. So for you had your identification with oldest child, only daughter, all the things, until this was revealed. How old were you when you found out you had a sister?
35.
Okay. So now, how did that impact your sense of identity?
The jealousy was the most surprising emotion for me, because I was like, now I have to, I can handle everything and anything. And now this one's going to come in. And it's so interesting because we have a great relationship now. But at the time, jockeying for position, with our parents and their understanding of her and trying to sort of relieve the stories that they'd carried around for so many years, and making sense of then our own family system. Dad had, the infidelity was a big deal. Like, they had a hard time looking at each other the vast majority of their marriage, which makes sense to me now. But I think for me, it was really about trying to figure out that relationship with her and what that meant for us. And, she was raised 2 hours from my front door. We were at the University of Alberta, we lived 6 blocks from each other at the same time. Wow. She has 1 child now in between the ages of our children. And it's been fascinating. Mostly, I'm so grateful I had the time to unpack it with my parents, because had she discovered, or had she came to us, or we discovered, or however it unfolded when they were gone, I think that would have been remarkably difficult to be like, what the and even now I say to my mom, like, had she not found us, would you have told me? Like, on your deathbed? And she's so adamant, absolutely not. That was the deal. That was the promise that we had made to the nuns, the social workers at the time. That was the promise that your father and I made to each other. And even though there were so many times that I wanted to be like, you have no idea, I would never have it. I was like, wow, like the rules that get stuck in our head, the patterns that we start to believe viscerally, the time they were encoded just was really such an eye opener for me as you kind of reflect on your own system, you know, how that happens in all of us so deeply.
It's just so interesting that it's, again, so you answered the question very astutely and very accurate, you know, of why, in a way, why you do what you do, but why you're uniquely gifted and talented to help others decode, unpack painful, complicated situations, right? It's like in your experience. I'm just always so fascinated for like, how do we get here? Because we could be doing anything, but we're doing this. Do you know what I mean?
Truly. And
Yeah.
it's such a gift to be able to do this. And I only reflect on this. I'm going to be 50 this year. And I think about how much this process has taught me, how much, you know, having the privilege of being inside other people's trauma and stories, when it really makes you reflect on your own. I would argue that I'm I'm white, I'm straight, I'm able-bodied. I'm in this position of privilege that I try never to take for granted.
Yep.
And it is just such a gift to be able to be a regulating other for another. And the responsibility that comes with that has only became clear to me. I mean, I think early in my career, and this is true for many people, I think that you get completely overwhelmed and you feel impostery. I mean, I would stay at the hospital and, you know, put kids to bed at night and, you know, come at 6 a.m. because I thought nobody could do it better than me and cry myself to sleep because I'm like, I don't have a fucking clue what's going on here. And, you know, make shit up all the time and really question that. And I think that's such a rite of passage. You know, you're not supposed to know the things. But the transition of that and the introduction of understanding what boundaries means, I mean, that's where I've learned so much from your work, because I hate that word. I mean, I'm a human connections specialist, whatever the fuck that is. But how can you, it feels so juxtapositioning when you say, yes, I'm all about connection, but boundaries is the only way home. And I'm like, I don't like it. Because you taught me that it is so much, boundaries is not about, it's not for anybody else but you. And that's the biggest shift for me, is that if I'm not okay, the people I serve don't stand a chance. Yeah. And so I can do this work to the end of time, but I'm not good enough to undo multiple generations of abuse, neglect, and trauma. I'm not good enough to do everything and be everything to everybody and still expect, you know, my marriage to stay intact or, you know, my conversation with my children to be great. So I think it's the greatest evolution around, you know, you can do great work, but the most important people you work for are the ones you go home to.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that for a long time before I became a psychotherapist, I was a talent agent. And I
didn't know that about you.
Yeah. I was negotiating contracts for supermodels and celebrities the last 4 years of my career. So it was like, you know, this very different life. But what I was really lit up about even then was mental health, my own mental health. It was helping people get into eating disorder clinics and drug treatment clinics. Like, you know, there became a point I had to leave because I was like, you literally don't care about entertainment anymore. Like, you have to get out of here. But the process of me dragging my feet to become a psychotherapist, part of it was because I was still working on my boundaries. I was still such a boundary disaster. And I was so worried that I was going to like have a client like sleeping on my couch at my apartment, you know, I really felt like there was nothing I wouldn't do to help lessen the suffering of others. But it didn't strike me until I'd done a bunch of therapeutic work that there was so much control and so much attempt at control that I was exerting in those behaviors. And that what really sobered me up and really got me to get it together professionally about my boundaries was when I really got that it was not good therapy to have disordered boundaries with clients. Not even a little bit. It's not good therapy. And that was such an ego thing to me because I'm such a, you know, type A or overachiever, where I was like, wait a minute, what is happening right now? This is not good therapy. Then I was like, I really got it. Like, I wasn't doing, it was for myself. It was the illusion of control. There was all of these things that I was sort of satisfying with overfunctioning, overgiving, overdoing, getting up at 6, staying till 10, all the things that you're talking about. And it was through that process of getting that if I don't have good boundaries, with my clients and good boundaries with myself, because really that's what we're talking about is everything, Jody, you're talking about, this is all internal boundaries, right? We're talking about, do I rest when I'm tired?
Yeah.
Do I say no when I need to say no so I can say yes to me and be okay and not be burnt out? Because the burnout epidemic is it's just so profound, and it's still so here. So let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the trenches with people in burnout.
Yeah, I mean, I would love your opinion on this, because I think this is so interesting. The data is really astronomical. We've never seen this level of burnout organization across industry and organization for the first time in history right now. And so if you think, the definition of burnout, this is Freudenberger came up with this theory in it's older than me, it's 1974, I think. And basically the definition is when the resources outside of work intended to fill your soul are not greater than those that get sucked from your soul at work, you get burnt out. Shocking, huh? You don't put stuff back in the tank, you're not going to be able to continue to serve. And so I often talk about how boundaries are not a function of the work you do. People are like, my caseload's too big, or, we're in, the school system is shitty, or it's the presidency, or it's the whatever, like we've never, It's not a function of the work you do. It is, as you just said, it's a function of your capacity or lack thereof to rest. Mm-hmm. And do you think that's true? I mean, tell me about that, because I think that's the message that we're switching, particularly in police organizations for me, in education. That's where I spend a lot of my time. Mm-hmm. Because I think if I could invest in anybody in this next season, I spoke at the United Nations, the head of the General Assembly this year, and I was like, here's the 3 places that I would consider. We need increased support for parents, educators, and police officers, because they are the primary regulators of humans in this next generation. If they're not okay, the people they serve don't stand a chance. Stop investing, and this is like sounding asinine, but in the children and the people who need it. I want you to hang on to the people doing the walking, the caregiving, because they've never been this exhausted, which means the perpetual cycle will continue. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think that what you're saying is true, because in respect to maybe people are overloaded with cases. Listen, like there's a reality that there's more expected and less given, right? Less resources to do the same or more. Okay.
Amen. Yeah.
But your internal landscape is all you. And so if you can never put it down, like I had this description that when I was a young therapist, I was talking to my supervisor, and she was like, Terri, it's like you're walking around all the time carrying all of your clients' charts on your back. Mm-hmm. So it's like I was always thinking about my clients. I could not put the charts down. And she's like, that hypervigilance feels familiar because of your life, but you're not doing your clients any good. And what will happen is you can't do this forever. And that was such a visual. I was just picturing myself like with my back, like crunching with all of these charts. And again, not for the betterment of the therapy itself or the clients. Mm-hmm. And so part of this emotional self-regulation and internal boundaries, which is really what we're talking about, this is an inside job for the people on the front line and the caregivers. And what I see, because of, this last book that I wrote was about high-functioning codependency, which is what we're talking about, like overgiving, overdoing, having disordered boundaries, being amazing givers and shitty receivers and all the things. Yeah. But the thing is, again, what we see is that you can't do it forever without the autoimmune disorders or cancer or MS or the numbing or the breakdown or the shadow addictions, as I call them, right? Where people are not like getting hammered at 8 a.m., but they are drinking 4 glasses of wine a night, and this is how they're coping, right? I just call them shadow addictions because they may not, you may never get a DUI, but it is still impacting how you feel, your nervous system, and what's going on. So I do agree with what you're saying and think that this is why it's so important that the caregivers, I always say this, and when I do say it, people, say, oh, that sounds selfish, but, what you think, how you feel, and what you want needs to matter, and it needs to matter to you more than what anyone else wants, thinks, or feels. Right. Because if we can master that, right, then we can compromise, we can choose to work overtime if we choose it, but it's all with eyes wide open, rather than this compulsive, reactive, habituated behaviors that then you have, your tank is not just empty, it's like burnt out.
Right. And the tell for me is always resentment. And I think that's the issue, right? It's not about like, you can't, like, I work harder than many people that I know, and I love it. I'm in 200 planes a year. We have young kids. Like, this feels asinine to most people, including my mother-in-law. And, like the conversations about like, what are you doing? And I'm very clear on what I'm doing. And I think that it's so important, because it doesn't mean you're not going to put in the work. It doesn't mean you're going to be, loving what you do, or being up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or writing a book, at all hours of the day. It's mostly how you respond to that becomes really important. And I think we're really in a place right now where we are raised, or many of us have been raised in this sort of understanding that napping, resting, any of those things, that's lazy. See? And I mean, I grew up on a farm in Canada, right? If I was laying on the couch at any point, this is a major problem. Like, what are you doing? What have you accomplished today? And I think that the biggest difference between just one generation is our capacity to rest. So gone are the days of a sacred day to worship. Yep. Gone are the days where, I mean, when my father would come home from work at 6 o'clock, nobody could get him. The patients, the clients, the employee, nobody could get him. Not one person, huh? Before I even pee, I'm checking this. I'm strapping on a watch, which is a cortisol shooter. Okay. And people are, we're getting all the things. The kids can get me anytime. My body knows that. My husband can get me anytime. My team can get me anytime. Your body keeps a score. I mean, Bessel, God love him. Yeah. The idea is so true. And when you don't for a second, I say this all the time, Terry, which I think is crazy, but where my favorite place is right now? On a plane. Because nobody can get me. We're not even good enough to be able to be, people say this to me all the time. I just want to be in the bushes, in the woods. I want a cabin where I don't have to deal with people, nobody. And I'm like, we have agency to be able to shut off the phone, but we're not that good. I just looked this up yesterday. Google, Amazon, Uber, Meta hold $8.49 trillion in market share capitalization. The desire for us to stay connected digitally to each other is bigger than any human condition has the capacity to fight right now. Including, like, I just want to live in a bush with a cabin, which basically means I'm taking away your ability your access, exactly, right? And we're like, we would give up everything. We would sell our homes and go to the bushes. Instead, we forget that we could just, I got to get in a plane 35,000 feet above the people to think that, my body can rest. And I think that's going to be the greatest understanding of this next generation is how we take back that agency.
I think what you're talking about with the tech stuff is real. It's funny. I had a client years ago who was such a workaholic, such a high-functioning codependent, just all the things for other people, that the only way that she could ever rest is she would go away to the Bahamas for 4 days by herself. So she would just be she's like, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we'll do a virtual thing, Like, she so couldn't say no to other things that she had to physically. And how many moms had been like, I literally fantasize about, I was just having this conversation the other day with someone. I was fantasizing about if I could just end up in the hospital,
I know.
then I would have to rest. Like, if I could just, and
I'm like, how crazy is that? If I just got a condition, like, I don't want to die, but I would like some like debilitating condition where they knock me out so I can sleep and nobody can get, like, honestly,
right?
Like, the ludicrousy of that, but I say it. I mean, this is no judgment on anybody else, because this is me too. Like, if you could just get till this day, if you could just get me to this point, things will slow down. If we just, and we have 3 kids.
But it doesn't.
We don't.
The thing is, Jody, it doesn't slow down. And
that won't.
Day doesn't come. I had this whole thing with my own relationship to tech, and it's a little bit different because I'm 10 years older than you. Right. And it's like, that's a big techie 10 years. Right, because you think my entire childhood into all through my 20s was tech-free. Yeah. Because it didn't exist. So it was only in my 30s that cell phones, and when I was in grad school and got a computer, like, up till that point, no computer, no phones. So it's a different relationship to it, but became just as addicted as everyone else, not knowing, your dopamine center is like losing its mind and what is going on with the phone and the social media. And then really just backing it all up. And because my husband is 10 years older than me, right? It's different. So he didn't, he even got it sort of less in a way. He's more of a Luddite than I am, right? And he doesn't need it as much for his business because he's an artist anyway. Just not being on my phone, just having my phone plugged in on another floor. I have a basket at the front door of the house. When people come in, I'm like, put your fucking phone in the basket, bitch, because I'm not here to look at the top of your goddamn head. So if you want to be on your phone, to my nieces, go in the fucking car. Like, I got other shit I could be doing too.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be talking to you while you're half listening and half on Instagram. Like, I'm not interested. So I think part of it is really getting clear about having those tech boundaries and deciding, do you want to live life light, which is what being on call all the time creates. You're only half in. Your lived experience is half as juicy, half as interesting, half as impactful. You have to decide that, because the bottom line is we don't have the power to make that not happen. Yeah. We just have the power to have better boundaries around our tech, and we have to make decisions about that. I purposefully never got an Apple Watch for exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And one of my sisters, who I'm very close to, but when I'm with her, she's with me 50% of the time, and the rest of the time she's got a kid fucking and her kids are grown. Keep in mind, I mean, her youngest is in college. It's not like she got little kids at home. But I'm like, I took her to Miraval with me because I was doing something at Miraval, and I was like, Kath, take your fucking Apple, like, you have to not. Where she was just acting like she's at home. I'm like, can we be on vacation? Because now it's not just so rude. It is so rude, but it's not even the rudeness. It's the lack of presence.
100%. 100%. And even on stage, here's what's interesting, because the evolution for me, even in therapy, for a long time, and I would have my phone close, I would have my watch on, and like get stealthy at like just trying to write a note and just make sure the kids got home from, or that, there's not an SOS. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're not even present. So everything comes off. Every time I get on a stage now, everything has to go away because I'm not that good. If, my father's in the end stages of dementia, if something happens and I see that, you're only, as much as I love this job, you're only going to get 30% of me. And I'm going to be able to continue because we can do this at the same time. We can be in two different places. But to your point, you're not getting all of me. And I'm not giving you the things that I want to give you either, because I'm losing access to parts of it. Not my ability to be great. That's not what's changing here, but your access to it. And so taking that back on purpose, my God. And that's going to be the greatest thing, because the allure is so good. In this is everything and everybody I love. I think about this with kids. We just had this conversation about Adolescence, the new Netflix series, and, how alluring it is, and cell phones in schools. And, kids are not that good because we're not that good. I know I'm supposed to sleep. I'm very aware of the neurophysiological factors of rest. Okay. But when I am into the second episode of Narcos, and the kids are asleep, and I got my fancy snacks, I'm just going to go for one more episode. You know what I mean? Because it's just 2 in the morning. You know what? It's fine, right?
Yeah, so it's not that bad.
No, I'll figure it out. And so we have, as a nation, never been this sleep deprived, right? And so this is what I talk to educators about all the time. What is going on with kids these days? And this is the greatest predictor of wellness, is your ability to sleep. We've never been this disconnected, because we've never been this exhausted. And I think, we often think about, if you've ever seen a toddler miss a nap, they're assholery-ish, right? And so are we. So we're living with those people. We are those people. We're teaching those people. We're trying to police those people. I think there's an underlying understanding here of the human condition that hasn't changed, but that we've just lost access to it.
So in a lot of the work you talk about, which I love this, that, we're never meant to do any of this alone. Mm-hmm. So why do you think human connection, since that's what you do, is so fundamental to our well-being? Because really everything we've been talking about so far is stuff that's interrupting our connections. It's like the illusion of connection rather than connection.
Truly, truly. And here's the data that just blew my mind. Okay, so whoever created us, despite what you believe in this human, us being humans, whoever created us, if you Buddha or Yahweh or the great creator, or, the great Big Bang, however we got here as humans, there's 2 rules. Number 1, whoever made us said this, I'm going to make you neurobiologically wired for connection. Okay, we will never automate relationships. So you disconnect from an infant, they die. That is not going to change. Okay. We know the data is clear. You do better in this face-to-face. There's the neurophysiology changes significantly. Not the same things get wired if you're doing it on text or email or whatever. So rule number one, we're neurobiologically wired for connection. The second rule is a curveball. Whoever created it said, I'm going to make you neurobiologically wired for connection. But the hardest thing you will ever do, rule number two, is look at each other. And you know this in couples therapy, right? I often don't know whether you're going to stay together or not. But my only goal when I do couples work is to get two people to look at each other. Because there is so much unwritten between us that I don't know about. Between you and your husband, you can tell me your issue, he can tell me yours, and I can hold space for both of you, and it'd be just all friggin' lovely. When you look at each other, you two only have the memory of what that felt like the day you got engaged. You two only know when you walked his mama home and what his face looked like. I don't know those things. So getting you to look at each other is the greatest thing of all time. Now listen, we've never had so many opportunities to look away. No. It is estimated that our great-grandparents looked at their children 72% more of the time than we look at our babies today. So the fundamental focus on human connection for me is that we won't automate it. I don't care how much we get good at the chatbots and the AI. The only AI, Esther Perel said this, the only AI that matters is authentic interaction. And when we get back, when we understand, and this is what I say to organizations globally, right? I was with Coors Molson, 170 of their greatest leaders of all time, right? And we're so interested in how do we get ahead of the game, the AI, what are we doing with the chat GPT and all the things? Good. You need to do that to stay ahead in industries, for sure. No problem. Sure. That's going to be easily accessible. What won't be is maintaining a leadership core value that is invested in keeping your people together. Showing up in their offices, having the lunches, doing the things that, is going to sustain companies. That's where people will want to work when they feel seen.
So true. So in Feeling Seen, you talk about the power of acknowledgement. So what is one simple way you could tell us that we can make someone feel truly seen today? Anybody listening can just do it today.
These 3 words changed my life. Okay, Kelly Corrigan wrote a book with the same title, and I'm mad because I think it was the greatest book title of all time. Tell me more. When you genuinely want to know, so typically when people are distressed, our babies, our partners, our teammates, we want to fix it, right? Okay. Take a deep breath, look at me, calm down, which is in the history of the free world, the most brutal thing you can say. But we like it best when people are calm. You like it best when people are, and it makes sense to me because we are at our best when we're emotionally regulated. So we want to get our children back there. If they say like, I'm so sad, Mommy, I have no friends, or, my boyfriend just broke my heart. Okay, I'm going to throat punch him, or like, were you being an asshole? Like, we're trying very hard to get them regulated. There's the beat in the middle that we're losing access to in this world. And for me as a therapist, this is the greatest predictor of therapeutic relationship success, is if you find somebody really good at acknowledgement. Because the outcome has nothing to do with what you're going to do. It is about getting back to the best parts of you. And so the greatest ways to do that for people, particularly when you want to fix it, is take a beat first and say something like, tell me more. What's the hardest part? What am I missing? Any of those things, what that allows you to do is regulate your system before you panic. And it also gives them a chance to feel seen. And when they feel seen, they rise every time.
Ah, so good. I love it. All right, I want to ask you our final question that I love to ask people because I'm still fully obsessed with boundaries. Personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle, and how have you overcome it if you have?
I have 1,000 answers that come flooding in. Professionally, that was the greatest teaching of my time, and I'm still learning it all the time about how to be able to be authentic. And I swear I get very, I push back on the traditional expectation of psychologists, much to the chagrin of my college. And I think that I'm understanding, my greatest lesson has been how to be authentic and vulnerable in a place and still be very clear on what creates the safety and the boundaries in a therapeutic relationship. That's been one. The second biggest learning for me is certainly then, if I take that into the personal space, is how do I be a good friend? How do I be successful as a woman? How do I not try to make everybody happy by buying them things because I feel guilty for the fact that I've become very successful? That's been my ongoing challenge, to try to figure out how not to feel guilty for success, not to try to make everybody else feel better so that I can feel better about it. It's all fucked up, but something like that.
So good. I love that so much. One of my best friends is an energy worker. Her name is Laura Riggio, and she teaches about abundance. And one thing she'll do these live, classes that I've been to many times, and she does muscle testing, and she has us test the phrase, "It's okay for me to make more money than my friends, my family, and the poor." And literally, like, every person's muscle, you can muscle test yourself, and it goes weak. And she's like, here's the thing about creating abundance. It has to be okay with you to make more money than your friends, your family, and the poor. You can always choose to start a foundation. You can always choose to give all your money away if you want to. But there's such I so understand what you're saying about the trying to make it okay. And I've had, in my career, so many high profile clients where your whole life has changed because now you're making a gazillion dollars more than anyone. So if you want your friends from home to come where you're filming, you have to pay for everyone to do everything because nobody has money. And then how does that then infiltrate the relationships? And it's so complicated. But I think just answering that question, your own, like knowing it is actually okay for you to be abundant regardless of what is happening for other people is like a major boundary.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And right smack in the middle of learning it.
I love it. All right. So where can people find you, Jody? This was so fun.
drjodycarrington.com is the website. And I love to spend some time on socials and, Instagram is where we hang out the most and LinkedIn, but I would love your community to be a part of ours.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. Let's do this again. I really loved having you.
Thank you.